When I was young, my mum used to take me on the most fascinating adventures. She would buckle me to a booster seat and put me in the back of a blue Datsun, and we would go in search of heavy machinery at construction sites and roadworks. I could spend hours mesmerized by the giant contraptions, fascinated by how they worked. I loved mechanical things, and my parents fostered this interest. They gave me tools, and they gave my brother clothes. My first day of primary school is a day that I remember well, and a day which my parents probably wished they didn't remember at all. Obsessively collecting and studying pine cones, I was fascinated by their intricate geometry and interested in the small gaps in between their scales. I had the most suitable purpose for them in mind. The school bell finally rang. My mom was standing at the front gate with all of the other proud parents. Clutching a pine cone in either hand, I ran towards the group, shouting, "Mommy, Mommy, I've figured out how to build a bomb." I never understood why I was bundled into the back of the car and whisked away while the other doting parents enjoyed their children's papier-mâché dolls and paintings. We left South Africa when I was 9 and moved to New Zealand. Apparently, it had nothing to do with my obsession, although I did notice on arrival that pine cones and explosives featured prominently on the list of prohibited import items. In high school one day, sitting in the classroom, the ticking clock above the blackboard held my attention. No sooner had the teacher stepped out and I was dismantling that clock. I unscrewed the back, opened the mechanism, took out the small magnet, cut it in half, put it back in the opposite way around, replaced the screws, hung the clock back up on the wall, and to my classmates' delight, as we looked up, the second hand was slowly making its way around the clock face, backwards. Always building and breaking things, and in search of like-minded people, in my final year of high school, I gravitated towards JCar, a store that sold electronic components. They knew my face, and I knew their products. They gave me a weekend job. Each customer had an interesting request. We had technicians looking for coils and capacitors for elevators, hooded men urgently seeking sensitive scales and paying only in 20s. Desperate children looking for remote-control helicopters. And one day, a woman walked in and asked if we sold tombstones that played music. Before rational thought kicked in, I'd replied, "Unfortunately not in store, madam, but I could build you one." Her husband, a DJ, had passed away, and she wanted his tombstone to play songs. In collaboration with Glover Memorials, knowing very, very little about technology or design, I started construction on this most peculiar music box. Built out of 1/4-inch bulletproof polycarbonate, it ran on 50 D-cell batteries that needed changing every 100 days, and it played reggae music on demand. 3 months later, I received an email from the New Zealand Master Monumental Mason Association. We had won an award for the best tombstone in New Zealand. It was about this time that I finished high school, and I didn't know what an award-winning tombstone designer was to do. So I did the most sensible thing that a teenager could come up with. I held a grand farewell party, sold my bed, packed my bags, and left the country on a one-way ticket. 18 months later, I was in Botswana. My mum phoned. They'd just finished cleaning up from the party. It was time for me to come home. I got back to New Zealand, and I started at design school. Inspired by this toy that I had when I was young, this first lamp is an exploration of balance. The weights on the end of this first arm weigh 10 kilos. And the arm balances on the end of that red needle. The weights on the end of the second arm weigh 2 kilos. The lighting element at the end weighs 100 grams. And the second arm balances on the tip of the first arm on another red needle. I'm always fascinated watching people who see the lamp for the first time. So the lamp's an exploration of balance and leverage and torque, as the 10 kilos at the bottom are needed to lever the weight of the 100-gram shade at the top. And it's always interesting watching people who see the lamp for the first time, as their eyes kind of scan over the whole body of the lamp, and then suddenly their expression changes when they realize that the whole thing is being balanced on the single red point. Moving on with lamps, Pinocchio is a collaboration with a talented media artist, Chan Zhao. We asked ourselves the question, what would it mean if a lamp like this were alive? This is a classic angle-poised lamp from the 1930s. So lamps are nocturnal. They only wake up at night when it's dark. Lamps are serious creatures. I'm a lamp. My job is to illuminate. And you can see the kind of language used to describe the lamp in this article from the 1940s. Flexible, obedient, practical. Pinocchio is the complete opposite. Stubborn, playful, completely impractical, but full of character. So we came up with a computer algorithm to drive his behavior, and he uses the camera and computer vision, another type of algorithm, to track and follow faces around the room. And we paid special attention to the kind of expression that we could get from subtle gesture from the lamp's body. So you'll notice that when Pinocchio turns himself back on, he kind of looks at his switch like, huh, what just happened? Flick, and then his light's still not on, and then he gives like a sneeze at the end, as if there's a wire that's loose in his head or something. So we paid attention to those little subtle gestures. One of the problems that we were having with Pinocchio is that he was overheating when he was on exhibition. So we had to come up with a way to program a cool-down sequence where he could go to sleep and rest and not be disturbed.
The nail goes pretty cool.
This is Pinocchio. He's overheated. This time he's turning himself off rather than on. And what he does, he keeps his head over his switch, protecting it until he's sufficiently cool. He comes up again, exposing it, and he's ready to be interacted with again. So this is what Pinocchio actually sees. This is from his camera. This is his face tracking. This is a computer simulation of Pinocchio that controls the physical lamp. There's an early prototype being affected by it. And here are the two coming together. You see the face in the top left, and you see the computer simulation in the bottom. So while Pinocchio was on exhibition, he met Neil Harbisson. Neil Harbisson is considered by many to be the world's first cyborg. He was born with a chromatopsia, which means that he can only see in grayscale, and he has this camera permanently attached to his skull, implanted into his skull, and what it does is it translates colors to sound. So for Neil, color is sound. And so there was this moment where Neil and Pinocchio were staring deeply into each other's eyes, or into each other's cameras, and Neil says, "I feel a connection." And I think that if Pinocchio could speak, he would have said something similar. So a lot of people ask what Pinocchio is for. Is it a toy? Is it for children? Is it going to be manufactured? And I think that this talks about our unquestioning acceptance of technology into our lives. We walk around with tracking devices in our pockets, and we download apps and give them access to all of the data on our phones without the technology being cutified into a form like this. I find the idea of a lamp like Pinocchio living in a child's room with a camera kind of worrying. So I sometimes find myself doing experiments just to satisfy personal curiosity and just seeing where the experiment takes me. In this instance, I was interested in water. I got together 25 motors and built this 25-ray pump machine that's designed to extrude individual droplets of water. So here it's having a drink. And each droplet of water is computer controlled. So I was thinking about the ocean. The ocean's made up of multiple droplets, and it comes together to create this huge ocean. What happens if you took the individual drops away and created it in a different way? And it was quite an interesting exercise engineering a machine like this that's so big, but that affects such small change as a droplet of water. If you watch one of those syringes carefully, you might actually see it move. That's all the movement that's needed to create a droplet of water. Right, and a close-up of the plunger. So, on the theme of water, I was thinking about water, and I started thinking about fish. I was studying in America, and a lot of students there owned pet Siamese fighter fish, or betta fish. And the way that all of them described them, almost all of them described them, was like this thing that they kept in the corner. They got it as a joke, and it was not very interactive. They fed it when they remembered, and it sounded like they were describing lava lamps that needed feeding, just this like blob of color in the corner. So interested to explore this relationship myself, I bought Jose, a wonderful fish with a sparkly personality and an appetite to match. Jose sat on my desk and watched my every move through his watery magnifying glass. I soon found that he had followed my hand around the outside of his tank attentively, and I implemented a rigorous training and enrichment program, including an obstacle course. After only 2 weeks, Jose could jump out of the water and get food off of my finger. Late one night, I was staring into his tank intently when the perimeter of the tank expanded, first to include me and then the room. Soon I was swimming around the room with Jose in reckless abandon, competing for tidbits of food that were floating and bobbing on the roof. I woke up and I started building the above marine. The above marine is a tool that allows Jose to show others the side of him that he had shown to me. It's a submarine with wheels designed for use on land. This is actually what the above marine sees. The red dot is where it thinks Jose is, and based on where he swims, it drives in that direction. The above marine can go in any direction at any time. As you can imagine, a fish doesn't just swim backwards, forwards, left or right, but can change direction at any point. So instead of the default... Thank you. Instead of the default assumption that fish have 3-second memories and that this makes it okay to keep them in a small tank in the corner of the room, devoid of stimulation, or the assumptions that we make about other people, animals, or the world, our unquestioning acceptance and drive for more technology and things, I hope that we can take the time to question and challenge these assumptions. It doesn't matter how much technology or how many things we have, tomorrow will be the same unless we respect all living creatures, ideas, and pursuits, no matter how big or small or seemingly insignificant. In the presence of such a wonderful audience and sharing the stage with such accomplished fellow speakers, all I have sought to do is share my humble life's experiences, from dump trucks, diggers, bulldozers, to betta fish. Thank you.